Hi, I'm Brienne, Master Gardener at Arber. Today, I'm teaching you how to start a garden. Growing your own homegrown veggies and herbs is such a rewarding experience, but it can be overwhelming when you're first getting started, so I'm going to help you through the entire process. Now, you might be wondering, where do I put a garden? Can I grow in pots or do I need to have land? What plants do I grow? How do I get started? When do I start planting? What gardening zone am I in? There's tons of questions, but I am going to answer all of those and more, so stay tuned. Now here are 10 simple steps to start a garden. Step 1, select the right location. Now if you're growing in your backyard, you want to make sure that your site location receives at least 6 to 8 hours of full direct sun every single day, and that it's close to a water source like a sprinkler system that you can hook up a drip line irrigation or a hose so you can water it regularly. You also want to make sure that the soil that you're working with in your outside backyard location, whether it's a raised bed or you're growing directly in the ground, has really good drainage, meaning that when it gets watered, water drains through it fairly quickly within a few minutes or so. That means that your plants will thrive in that type of soft, fluffy soil rather than hard, compacted, lifeless, dry soil. Now you can also grow herbs and some vegetables in pots on a patio setting, whether you live in a condo or an apartment complex. That will work too. You just want to make sure that that site location also has 6 to 8 hours of full direct sun every single day, and it's also close to a water source so that you can water it with a hose or a watering can. Both site locations need to be fairly accessible so that you can do easy maintenance and your garden doesn't become overwhelming for you. Step 2, know your hardiness zone and select plants for your climate and for the season that you're growing in. Now, if you are in a temperate climate, that means that you're going to grow cool season crops like broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts in the cool season or during winter time. And then you'll grow warm season crops like tomato, pumpkin, zucchini, squash in the warm season or during your summertime. If you are in a region that experiences a true winter or hard killing frosts, then that means that your growing season is between your average last frost date in spring and your average first frost date in fall. That's when you're going to grow warm season crops, and then you grow cool season crops in the spring and in the fall. If you don't know your garden hardiness zone, then go to the USDA Garden Hardiness Zone Map website online. There's a link for that shared in the caption here, and type in your zip code. That will tell you what your hardiness zone is, and then your hardiness zone tells you what plants you can grow and when. Next, you'll want to consider the size or the space that you have available in your garden, as well as your personal preferences of what you actually like to eat. You'll want to consider how much time you have available to maintain your garden and to care for it. It can be really overwhelming if you plant a huge garden, because then it becomes a lot of upkeep and you can get behind, and then it becomes really discouraging. So I recommend starting small, start with a small space, only select 3 to 5 plants that you actually really enjoy eating and that are easy to grow, and then go from there. So some easy to grow plants are tomatoes, zucchini, peppers, squash, lettuces, radish, and definitely intermix some perennial herbs like rosemary, thyme, oregano, and that is a really great place to start. Step 3, plan your garden layout. Now, before you put plants into the ground, you want to do a rough sketch of your garden to get a plan together. You'll need to be aware of the size that plants will grow up to be, so their mature height, their mature width, and make sure that there's enough spacing around each plant so that there's enough airflow. Now, it's okay if plants can overlap a little bit or get close to touching, but you don't want them to be so compacted together that airflow can't circulate through, because then you're just going to be triggering diseases and too much moisture will accumulate on your plant leaves. So do a rough sketch of your garden and figure out where you're going to put each plant, and then you'll also need to do a little bit of research on the plants that you want to grow. For example, if they're a vine growing plant like peas or pumpkin or squash or zucchini, you could trellis those up to create a little bit more space so they grow upward instead of outward, freeing up space around that plant. And then that will also tell you that you might need to get some trellises for your garden and figure out where those go in your garden so that everything is oriented in an organized way so that your garden is as healthy as it can be. Now, if you're growing vegetables in containers on a balcony or a patio setting, then you need to select pots that are going to be the appropriate size for the plants that you're growing. For example, if you're growing a large plant like tomato, you're going to need a large pot, at least 16 to 24 inches wide and 16 to 24 inches deep. Tomatoes, for example, have a really large root system and they're heavy feeders, so they take up a lot of nutrients from the soil that helps them grow into a big plant that produces a really good, juicy tomato harvest for you. So they're going to need a larger pot to accommodate their mature size. More medium-sized plants would consist of perennial herbs, or also radishes are quite small. Broccoli and cabbage are on the smaller side or medium size. Peppers are a really good medium size plant. Those will require a pot size that's 12 to 16 inches deep and wide. So if you're working with a smaller space, maybe start with those smaller plants. If you have a larger space and you want to go for it, then try growing a tomato in a large pot. Step 4, prepare your soil. Make sure all of the weeds, dead plant material, and debris are removed from your garden beds, and then you'll need to add organic matter or compost or composted animal manure. Now, this is a really important step because our vegetables consume a ton of nutrients from the soil. That's how they grow to be a big plant that produces a good harvest that we eat. We're getting the same nutrients from our food as the nutrients that are in the soil that the plants are consuming. So we have to return those nutrients to the soil so that the plants can thrive. Now, it's really good to do this in the fall, but if you haven't done it in the fall, then the spring is okay to do it too. You'll just want to apply a layer of compost to the top layer of your soil. A lot of people like to till it in, but I don't recommend that method because tilling can destroy the soil ecosystem, which takes a lot of time for it to build up. You know, there's microorganisms and macroorganisms like worms and insects making pathways in the soil. Water falls onto the soil and creates pathways for oxygen and for roots to flow into. It's kind of a complicated, amazing soil ecosystem. So if we till that up, we're destroying all of that. So it's really just best to layer on compost on top and let all of that life and bacteria and nutrients percolate down into the soil. That's going to set you up for success. Step 5, start seeds or buy seedlings for your garden. Now, there are some type of vegetables like root vegetables or carrots in particular where the seeds need to be directly sown into the soil where it will permanently grow. It's not okay to start them in a tray and then transplant them because the root system is so delicate they won't survive the transplant. So those types of seeds need to be directly sown, so you might need to do a little bit of research on what plants need to be directly sown into the soil. But other plants like tomatoes or peppers or lettuces, those can be transplanted. So you can start those in seedling trays and grow them until they're small seedlings, and then you can transplant them. Or if you're a beginner and you're just starting out, just keep it easy on yourself. Support your local nursery and go buy seedlings to transplant into your garden. Step 6, transplant your seedlings or sow your seeds in the garden. You'll want to make sure to follow the instructions on the back of your seed packet or on the plant tag to ensure that you're planting your plants at the right depth and with the right spacing. Now, in terms of timing, if you live in a temperate zone, that means you're growing your cool season crops in winter and your warm season crops in the summer. If you are growing in a zone that experiences true winter or frosts, then that means that you will be starting your garden or warm season vegetables after your average last frost date in spring, which for most people in northern regions lands around Mother's Day. When you're transplanting your seedlings into your garden, here's a master gardener tip for you. Mix a ½ ounce of bioprotectant, a ½ ounce of bioinsecticide, and a ½ ounce of biofungicide into a 1 gallon bucket of water. Then dip the root ball of your seedlings into the solution before putting them into the ground. This is going to instantly boost the immunity of your plants, prevent pests and diseases, and gently stimulate root growth. Then in about a week, you can fertilize your seedlings with Arber organic plant food. Step 7, add proper support. If you're growing cucumbers or peas or other vine-like crops, they'll need a trellis to grow along, so it's time to add that to the garden. Likewise, tomatoes need a cage to support their growth, so you can add tomato cages or other supporting structures to your garden to help those plants retain their structure and not grow flat. This will help you when you're harvesting, and then this also helps create airflow in your garden so that your plants stay healthy. Step 8, monitor for pests and diseases. You want to check your garden regularly, like every few days to check for common pests and diseases. Look on the underside of leaves or the top side of leaves for common pests, and then also look for damage like little holes or discoloration that could indicate a pest infestation or a disease that's happening in your garden. Be sure to do your Arber immunity boost and defense routine every other week by mixing a ½ ounce each of organic bioprotectant, organic biofungicide, and organic bioinsecticide into a 1 gallon bucket of water, and then spray your leaves all the way around, underside and the top side, and then drench the soil as well. That's going to target any pest and disease and also help stimulate growth for your garden. Step 9, water and fertilize your garden. You'll want to water your garden every few days. It depends on the region and how humid or dry your climate is, and also your soil type for how often you want to water. Just monitor your soil to make sure that your soil is consistently moist but not waterlogged or soggy. So that might be a couple times a week, it might be once a week, it might be once every 10 days. It kind of just depends on your area. I recommend watering in the cool evening hours after the sun has gone down, or in the early morning hours before the sun rises. That's going to help your plants take up as much moisture and water from the soil without losing it to evaporation. In terms of fertilizing your garden, you'll want to fertilize your garden every other week, so every 10 to 14 days, and you do that in between your immunity boost and defense routine. So alternating weeks, you're going to be doing an immunity boost and defense routine, and then your feed routine. You'll do your feed routine by mixing 2 ounces of Arber organic plant food into a 1 gallon bucket of water, and then drenching that over the soil. Don't spray Arber plant food onto the foliage of plants because that's not doing anything for the plant. The plant takes up nutrients and fertilizer from the soil and from the root system, so only fertilize the soil and the root system around your plants. Step 10, harvest and enjoy your veggies. Harvest your veggies when they are ripe and ready to be picked, and then put them into your meals and enjoy the fruits of your labors. Remember, gardening requires patience and learning from experience. Don't take it too seriously, just have fun with it. And the more you do it, the more confidence you'll gain and the more experience you'll gain, and it will become easier. Tell us how you like this video in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and tune in next time for more expert gardening tips. Happy gardening!